Hey guys, this is Grace and welcome to my channel. And so we're just going to dive into the first card of this video. I wanted to highlight that heart, that big heart in that my favorite thing stamp set. And I am actually using the backside of the pattern paper, one of the pattern papers that I chose for this kit, and that's going to be the white cardstock. Now, this is my first card, so if I were to do it again, I would just use white cardstock because you're going to find out alongside with me that later on I'm going to run out of pattern papers. And that's it made me sad because I didn't pick enough pattern papers for this kit. But we're just going to move on. This is going to be the first card because my plan is that I am going to stamp and heat emboss that heart. And since I'm already prepping the heart, I might as well prep the sentiment as well. So I'm just going to stamp them with the Versamark ink and then heat emboss them with black powder. I am going to put my anti-static tool on the paper just to make sure that I just get powder in the specific places that I want to. It's going to stick just on the ones that have the Versamark ink and not on the other sides of my paper. I'm also using my Tim Holtz stamp positioner to make sure that I can stamp this many times without it in the same place on the paper so that it will have a crisp look. I'm just pressing on there a couple of times and then I am going to put the powder in and then heat emboss. So my idea for this particular card was just to use the grooves that was created inside the heart to create a rainbow. So that's why I wanted to do the heat embossing so that the colors that I will add, because I'm going to be using watercolor, that they won't move or go through the other compartments of the heart and just stay in the specific spot that I want them to. Of course, I had put in a white scrap of paper on my work surface so that it will catch all of the powder as I pour it on the heart. Now it's heat embossing time. Now I am not an expert in heat embossing. I feel like I'm just beginning, but with what I have seen online, what I've read people do is that you preheat your gun a little bit, make sure it's warm before before it hits the paper. That way it will heat emboss faster. And I've also seen some people, when they're done embossing the front, that they will run the embossing in the back of the paper too. And sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. As you can see, I didn't do that with this one, but sometimes I do it too, just to make sure that that's all, that we get all of the powder melted. So now I'm going to pull out my watercolor set. I just got this at Michael's a long time ago. And then I also have a watercolor brush, which I really love because it has a barrel for the water. And so I don't have to get a separate cup for water, and it's all in there. I also have my mixed media paper background. I forgot what it's called, but anyways, I use that for when I'm using mixed media stuff so that I can get messy on my table without actually having all of that mess on my scrapbook table, and it could easily be swiped off. I think I bought the one that supposedly goes underneath your oven so that it'll be easy to clean. I didn't buy like a special crafting mixed media paper. I don't know what it's called, but anyways, I just used the one for the oven, and it's actually cheaper and it works just the same. I think there's like a Teflon thing part of that product, so I don't know, but anything that you put in there, especially water stuff, it easily wipes off. So now I am done with my rainbow. I did add a few more colors because, we only have 6 colors in the rainbow. So I added a few more just so I can fill up the rest of that heart. And so I'm adding some foam adhesive to the back, and I purposely put that kind of on the top of the card, but because I wanted to put the sentiment or part of the sentiment on the bottom, and I was thinking of having that thanks. Now that is not part of my initial kit, but it is a my favorite things script word. But when I put it next to that your best human ever, because it's green, it just doesn't stand out really well because of all the cool colors on the bottom of the heart. So I decided to put it up. But when I was moving the heart to make it more centered, it didn't want to budge. So my heart was a little bit on the top side. And then I finished it off with some of that paint in the bottle. Now we're going to go on to the second card. I kind of pre-prepared the card a little bit before I started filming. So what I did was I used that dotted stencil and the glitter paste and just created the background. And it's really pretty because it's glittery and it has texture. I also cut out the background piece, which is the green cardstock, and added used my favorite things die cut background piece for that, and the ones with the scallop and also the kind of stitch edge, and that's going to be my main background. Now with this one, I wanted that heart to just be part half of the paper, or half the paper showing, but I wanted it to be on an angle just to kind of give it a little bit of a different look instead of your predictable rectangle. And then I had cut out some hearts with the Echo Park nested die pack that I pulled out for this specific kit. I cut out a few hearts from the pattern papers that I used for my mini kit, and I am going to create heart balloons for it. And they are going to go on the top where you're seeing the green background. I'm just trying to figure out how to lay them. At first I was thinking maybe I can lay them next to that diagonal, kind of on a diagonal angle as well, and that's fine. I feel like that works, but that green, it just doesn't seem like it's popping against that green, the green cardstock, and so I decided to go with warmer colors instead to make them stand out against that green background. And so I had picked the 3 colors, and I picked the red as the biggest size, and then the pink and the mustard yellow as the smaller sizes. And then I'm also cutting my pre-heat embossed sentiment. I wanted to kind of just roll and get going with all of these cards. So after my first card, I stamped a few more sentiments, heat embossed them so that they will be ready for the next few cards here. Now, if you're new to my channel or new to this series, I create my own card kits with the items in my stash, and then I try to put together 10 cards using the items that I pulled out for the kit. This is my take on those 10 handmade cards, one kit. People would buy kits from different companies like Simon Says Stamp and Spellbinders, and they're all great, but I feel like I have a lot of items in my stash already, so instead of buying a kit, I would make my own and make the 10 cards. And so you are seeing the first batch of the cards that I'm creating with this particular kit. If you want to see the items that I pulled together for this kit, I made a video for that, and it's the one right before this, so make sure that you check out my channel to see that video. So now it's all about gluing. You did notice me that I pulled out a backing from those cardstock. They are die cuts with a view, and there's already adhesive on the back of that, so that was great. But I think I did I'm not sure if I added it with this one, but with the rest of the cards that I'm going to make using this particular cardstock, I will be adding a few more adhesive to the back, just because some of them I'm adding like different kinds of medium, and I want to make sure that they stick and they don't move. So now I am going to add the lines for my quote-unquote heart balloons. And I'm trying to make it straight. I know the yellow one is a little bit wonky, but that's okay. And I'm also adding the strings with just creating the lines with my pen so that it would actually look like a heart balloon. Now I'm going to add the sentiment just in between the diagonal line and also where the lines of the balloons meet, just to cover up that seam. And then I am going to add the paint dots, and I think this is Liquitex, and it's just really convenient to have it in this small bottle because then I can make the dots and it's perfect circles and there's no mess. So I really like these little bottles. I have to remember to use them more often. And that is card number 2. I really like the shine from the glimmer paste that I added to that cardstock. Now we go on card number 3, and this is a fairly easy card as well. Again, I cut out some tiny hearts this time from the pattern papers that I picked, and then I also grab that same die cut that I've been using for the last 2 cards and created my scallop border rectangle for my background. I am using a blue cardstock as my card base, and then I'm adding some ink to the edges of the little hearts as well as the background, just to make them stand out a little bit more against the card base. My goal for this card is just to create a bunch of, or a long banner of hearts on my card. Now this is a vertical card, and so I can only put like 3 hearts at a time for the banners, but then I'm just gonna have them kind of go from left to right and then right to left, you know, just kind of moving them, and I really like how they look. The only challenge that I found for this particular design of card is to kind of figure out where I'm going to put my sentiment, but we're going to deal with that later. Right now we're just going to lay down the hearts to the places that I want them on the card. Now as you can see, it feels like it's missing one more, and so thank goodness I cut out a few of these particular hearts so that I can just add one more because it just felt like I needed it. So now I'm going to use my pen, the same pen that I used for card number 2, and I'm just going to add some lines to that. Now, if I was being fancy, if I wanted to add a few more products here, I would have just added some, like a string or a twine on the back of these cards, but I prefer to have my cards to be flat right now just because I just like to make sure that they're flat so they'll be easy to mail, because I feel like that's the purpose of making cards, is to be able to send them out. And so most of the cards that I will be sending hopefully this year will be flat because I'm mailing them. So I wanted that to stay fairly one-dimensional. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And then just to add a little bit more fun to that string that I created, I added some of the kind of faux ribbon on the in between the hearts, and I thought that was a really cute addition to the card. And so now I'm going to add my sentiment, and I'm just going to add that in between the first and the second layer of, or banner, heart banner. And then I'm going to add, again, I'm going to add as a finishing touch are those little dots of paint. And I'm glad I picked the green one because of all of the warm colors that I'm using for the hearts. I feel like the green really stands out, and I'm putting that in 3 different places in my card so that I can create a visual triangle. And that is card number 3. We're going through those cards pretty fast. This 4th card I would say is one of my favorite ones just because I've always wanted to create a background with sentiments, but I never do. So I got a chance to do it with this one, and so I'm really happy with it. The focus of this card, of course, is the background and the sentiment. The sentiment says, "My heart is wherever you are," and that's one of the sentiments from the My Favorite Things stamp set, the one with all the hearts. And my plan was that just to cover the entire piece of paper with that same sentiment. But I also wanted that to do double duty, wherein the sentiment is already set. So what I did was I stamped the sentiment with the red ink to make that stand out, and then the rest will be gray ink so that I can still add some items, some elements within the card, but then you have that sentiment standing out from the background paper already. And I'm just showing you. And then another thing that I decided to do with the background was, instead of making it go the predictable left to right and just making it a straight line, I decided to do it diagonally so that when I put it on the card, that sentiment will be at a diagonal. And I just, just adding a little bit more kind of interest to the card and not quite so predictable. And I really, really enjoyed doing this background. I decided not to cut out this part because then you can see the process from start to finish. And I also didn't, start my sentiment right on the edge of it. Like, I liked how some of them are going out of it just to kind of make it look like it's an actual paper. So now I'm kind of auditioning background cards or card bases for this. And I'm deciding to go with the yellow just so that it will stand out against all of the elements that I'm putting in here. So at first I had cut out that black scallop heart using the Echo Park nested die set, and then I was going to use the multicolored paper with hearts on there as the kind of the focal point, but it was just a little too busy for my liking. I felt like some of the colors were not jiving well with whatever I already have on there. And because I worked so hard for the background, I wanted to keep the background. And so thank goodness that it's a double-sided paper that I could use the more subtle designed side of the paper and put that as the focal heart. Now, I felt like at this point, I felt like it needed something else. And so I pulled out that paste, and I'm going to add just some glimmer paste to that. Now, if I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't do it because then it wasn't yellow anymore. It was pink. But I do like the shimmer that the glimmer paste created for this particular heart. But now it's kind of messy, especially on the edges. So this is... if I mean, you're a crafter, so you know that sometimes we create things and then we just kind of make it worse before it gets better. But then I decided to add some paint, and so when I did that, that made it a little bit better for me. And so I'm gonna go with that. I like it. Maybe if I were to do it again, I'll probably take out the heart and just cut a new one. But I like the idea of experimenting on cards. All right, so for this one, again, I am using, I think maybe except for the fourth card, I use that scallop card or scallop die cut for all the rest of these cards that I'm creating for this first batch. If I've not already said, you're only going to see the first 5 cards from that I made for this particular kit in this video. And then if you are not subscribed yet, please do so you can catch the next the cards 6 through 10 after this particular video. And make sure you click that bell button as well so that YouTube will notify you when I do post the next one. And so with this one, I have the kind of a slightly subtle pattern paper, and then I created a wash in the center with my watercolor, and I also did a little bit of flicker so that I could have that kind of messy look on the edges. And the reason for that is I wanted to go back to the stamped heart, but I know that it's going to have just really subtle colors on there, and so I wanted to kind of have a distinguished like a color distinguishing between the background and also the heart that I'm creating. Now, this is card number 5, and I'm slowly realizing that if I use the back side of a pattern paper, that I will end up not having any more pattern papers. So I pulled out a separate white cardstock from my stash, and then that's what I'm going to be using here. Now, this particular white cardstock, because it is from a scrap stash, it's textured, so I'm going to have to stamp this heart a few more times just to make sure it goes into the grooves of the white paper. So I'm going to stamp that a few times, and I don't really need it to be totally like crisp and clear because it's just going to be my background. So my idea is that I am going to cover this heart with some pattern paper. So it's kind of like a paper piecing technique with the same image, but adding some paper with it. And I felt like this particular design was very easy for that technique because of the lines. And so other thing that I did was I stamped the heart, well, I stamped 4 quadrants of the heart, 4 sides of it, and then on pattern paper, different kinds of pattern paper, and then I'm just going to cut out pieces of it and then glue it onto the card base. And I really like how that worked out. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, you can also stamp the hearts in more paper and cut them in those triangles, as you can see, so you can get a lot more paper with this technique. But I was kind of lazy. Well, also because I kind of wanted to see how it's going to look first. So if I were to do this again, yes, I will stamp it in more color or more pattern paper so that you can really see all of those divisions within it. But I love that it has lines so that I can cut into it and I know that they will all fit. And so that is basically my heart. I added some paper to it, and then I'm going to, of course, adhere those papers with some adhesive to onto the background heart. And another beauty about all those lines is that I can add them. I add the little pieces and I know that they're going to line up because of all of those lines inside the heart and also outside. And another thing I believe you can do with this is if you really have the time and if you really want to make it stand out, you can always heat emboss first so that those lines will be well defined. But I figured that that's the stamping is good enough for me. Now the center, you can see that they're not quite perfect, but that's totally fine because my intention is that the sentiment strip will go in the middle so that you won't see much of that not quite perfect circle in the center. And again, I'm adding this heart to the background piece with some foam adhesive. And so I'm just cutting them out and then I'm going to peel off the edges of that. I do make my own foam adhesive, which is some fun foam and some adhesive sheets. I've been doing this for many years just because I have a lot of adhesive sheets, but now I've run out of it. So now I'm trying to think maybe it's time for me to start purchasing just some foam adhesive rolls. So let me know in the description box below which is your favorite adhesive roll, foam adhesive roll out there, so that I can start shopping and seeing what I could purchase, because it's been, I would say it's been at least 3 years since I've purchased some foam adhesive, just because I have made my own dimensional adhesive. All right, so that is my layout. I'm not sure if I'm going to add, I think I'm going to audition seeing if I'm going to add that hello, and I'm going to add a few more hearts here, but I really like the simplicity of that quadrant heart and then all of the watercolor on the background, and so I'm going to go with that. And those are my cards. I'm just going to give you a glimpse of all the rest of the cards that I have made with this particular kit. If you have any questions, please let me know in the description box below. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.